everybody. Welcome to the thesis defense of Amirhossein Sanaat. The jury for the defense is composed of Professor Simon Cherry from the University of California, Davis, of the Professor Abbas Alavi from the University of Pennsylvania, of the Professor Huang Yu Shi from the University of Bern, from the Professor Valentina Gariboto from the University of Geneva, the Professor Adil Zaidi from the University of Geneva is the thesis director, and myself, I'm the Professor Guillaume Sabreux from the University of Geneva as well. We will listen to you for 45 minutes, and then we will ask questions in turn, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, welcome everyone, and thank you all for coming today. Today I want to talk about the summary of my research I did in the past 4 years about the strategies for improvement of PET instrumentation performance and imaging methodology. So first, I would like to introduce my thesis committee, Professor Alavi from University of Pennsylvania, Professor Cherry from University of California, Davis, Professor Shi from University of Bern, Professor Amari from University of ETH, Zurich, Professor Gariboto from University of Geneva, and Professor Salvador from University of Geneva, and my supervisor, Professor Zaidi from University of Geneva. So let's start with some motivation and background. Based on this report provided by the International Atomic Energy Agency, there are around 5,700 PET around the world. And every year, around 5 million PET scans will perform. So it shows there is a huge demand for improving the PET scanner performance. Although this report has a dark side also, you can see from 220 countries, only 109 countries have access to PET scanner. So, by considering this report, we try to develop some methods to make the PET scanner more accurate, more feasible, and more safe. And what I mean by accuracy means that we try to make the PET scanner improve their spatial resolution, improve their temporal resolution, and also increase their sensitivity. And what I mean by feasibility and safety, it means that reducing the scanning time, reducing the injected. So to categorize all of these studies, we categorize them in 3 different parts. The first part is about the hardware improvement, the method which we use to make the PET scanner geometry more optimized, and also making some more optimized detectors. And in the second category, we are talking about the hardware and software intersection, how the software can improve the hardware performance. For example, how we can use the AI-based method for improvement of event positioning inside of the monolithic crystals, or how we can use AI-based model for improving the time of flight. We also developed some software-based method for reducing the scanning time, reducing the injected dose, and also doing attenuation correction and partial value correction. So in chapter 2, we started with a review about multifunctional and dedicated PET scanner with irregular geometries. So we basically wanted to cover all the creativity and novelty in PET scanner design. And we wanted to discuss about the performance versus the accessibility. So here you can see a history of dedicated and irregular PET scanners. There are plenty of nice design. For example, this design PRT, which developed at 1990 in our university, which is a partial scanner. Or very fancy design like this helmet chain and PET hat, which are very interesting, have an interesting design with high geometry coverage. And some very expensive and of course very high-tech scanners like the Explorer developed in UC Davis University. And of course some recently developed Prospect, which is a prostate dedicated PET scanner equipped with monolithic crystals and movable gantry. So in our review, we asked the expert in the field some questions. For example, we asked them what they think about the rules of AI in the future of PET scan. And the most of them was believed AI can play a role in data acquisition or improving the quantitative image reconstruction or also doing event position. We also asked them about which part of the PET scanner can be more costly, and they believe the photodetectors and the scintillator are more costly and they need to work more to make their price. We also asked them about the more demanding area of research in the case of dedicated PET scanners, and they believe working on improving the coincidence time resolution and improving the depth of interaction capability and optimizing also the geometrical configuration is very demanding in the future. So based on this review, we understand PET scanner availability is a must, and organ-specific PET scanner can reduce the cost and increase accessibility while maintaining image quality. The lack of structural imaging on dedicated PET scanner challenge quantitative imaging. When we are using, for example, the dedicated PET scanner for brain, having access to attenuation map is very challenging. So sometimes we can use AI to generate attenuation map from the emission data. And future PET scanner may rely more on high temporal resolution time of flight technology to improve image quality. And future PET scanner may have a more adjustable and dynamic structure. In chapter 3, we introduced a preclinical PET scanner with irregular geometry. So basically, we use two different types of detector with high resolution and high sensitivity. And we wanted to study if asymmetry in the PET scanner geometry can bring some added value in the case of performance. Here you can see the design we did. We basically had a detector with thin crystal, which brings for us high resolution, and detector with thick crystal, which brings the high sensitivity. And we imagine two scenarios. The first scenario is when the thick crystal are in front of the thin, and the scenario when the thick are in front of the thick and thin are in front of the thin. And we also imagine the detector can rotate to reduce the ununiformity. And we also compare this irregular PET scanner with some regular PET scanner or conventional PET scanner, which all of the detector, the scanner have only the detector with 2 mm crystal thickness, another scanner with only 10 crystal thickness, and another scanner with the average of these two, means 6 mm crystal thickness. And here you can see when we are in the case of a spatial resolution, when we are using the scanner with thick and thin crystals, it can outperform the scanner with all crystals similar and 6 mm. And of course, it can also perform better than the scanner which all of the detector have a 10 mm. And in this case, the scanner which all of the detector was 2 mm performed the best. We also calculated the absolute sensitivity. And again, you can see when we are using the scanner with thick and thin crystals, it can provide a sensitivity close to the scanner which all of the detector are 6 mm. So based on this study, we understand moving from the symmetrical to asymmetrical design may improve PET scanner performance. And a PET scanner with thick and thin monolithic detectors may reduce the trade-off between sensitivity and spatial resolution. And using the thin crystal reduce the uncertainty on the assigned LOR, resulting in a higher positioning accuracy and better spatial resolution. And of course, the asymmetrical design may cause some non-uniformity in the generated images, and a movable scanner can increase the maintenance cost. In chapter 4, we introduce the concept of active PET. Which is a multifunctional PET scanner with dynamic gantry size and also two different detectors. So we wanted to see if we change the size of the gantry, how it can improve the performance. And here you can see the configuration of our scanner. Our scanner have two types of detector, the pixelated detector, one with thickness, high thickness, and one with low thickness, and also the small crystal thickness. So this one brings for us the high sensitivity, and this one brings the high resolution. And we also imagine there is an electric jack behind of the arrays of the detectors, so which led them to move in the R direction or radial direction. Here you can see a video from our scanner. So basically we have these different detectors, pixelated scintillators, and our photosensors. And here you can see the gantry mode which our scanner can have. For example, here is the highest resolution and high sensitive, good for whole body imaging. Then the high sensitive crystal can get closer and make a partial ring, good for online therapy. And then all of the high thickness crystal can get closer and make a high sensitive scanner for pediatric imaging or even the brain imaging or even cell therapy and cell tracking. And the same can happen with the low thickness crystal. So to compare the performance of our scanner with the conventional scanner, so we simulated the biograph density and we compared the performance of these different configurations with biograph density. In the case of the spatial resolution, our scanner managed to show a range of spatial resolution from 2.5 to 3.2 at the 10 millimeter distance from the central field of view. While in the MCT, we only have a fixed spatial resolution at that distance. And also regarding the sensitivity, you can see the active PET can show a different sensitivity from 6.1 to around 16, while again the MCT have a fixed sensitivity. So it gives us this possibility to change our scanner geometry based on our desire. And here is also another example of our scanner quality. You can see that active PET can provide different degree of quality in compared to biograph density. So based on this study, we understand a scanner with dynamic gantry and different crystal thickness can outperform a static gantry with similar crystal thickness. And active PET can be used for different applications from brain imaging to cell tracking and online therapy. And optimizing the mechanical aspect might mitigate the worst performance of electronic parts. And a dynamic gantry make PET scanner more safe, accurate, and faster, and maybe even cheaper. So, of course, there is some disadvantage, which, for example, dynamic gantry may add some challenges regarding the complexity and maintenance costs. So, yeah. So, in the next category, we are talking about the hardware and software intersection. So in this chapter, we are talking about the polarized PET, which is a PET scanner with detector fitted with the polarized. So we wanted to understand how the technology which used in our sunglasses can improve the PET scanner performance and how this technology can remove the reflected optical photons. So here is a basic description about the physics of the light. Basically, the lights are unpolarized. And when they are passing through a filter, they can get polarized. And even when they reflect from a surface, again, they become polarized. And the same happens in our sunglasses. When the light comes directly from the sun, so they are unpolarized and they can pass through our sun. And of course, they become vertically polarized. While when they reflect from the surface, they become vertically polarized, and our horizontal polarized doesn't let it to pass through it. So because of that, we can see around of ourselves more clear and with higher quality. So we use the same strategy in the detectors. You can see here we have a monolithic crystal, and we put a layer of polarized between the crystal and the sipiens. And when a high energy photon enters the crystals, two scenarios can happen. The first scenario is when the photon, the optical photon, directly come toward of the sipien. In this case, they are unpolarized, and after passing through the polarized, they can become horizontally polarized. While when they reflect from the surface, they become vertically polarized, and they cannot pass through the polarized. So here we also calculated the difference between the detector without Polaroid and with Polaroid, and you can see when we are using Polaroid, the spatial resolution improves significantly. We also use the same detector in our preclinical PET scanner, and you can see the spatial resolution improve in the presence of the detector with Polaroid. And here you can see when we also simulated a grid phantom containing 16 sources, and the scanner with Polaroid showed a better performance in distinguishing these spheres. So it was better, you can see the line intensity profile is much more better in comparison when you don't use the Polaroid. So based on this study, we understand Polaroid enabled the detector to remove multi-reflected optical photons, those leading to higher spatial resolution. And in case of Cherenkov photons detection, the CTR can improve by suppressing the reflection of the optical forum on the lateral side. And using Polaroid affect the optical photon summation, of course, and because of that, its impact on our energy resolution and directly decreasing the sensitivity. So in chapter 6, we discussed about a deep learning model for estimation of the scintillation position inside of the monolithic crystals. So we basically wanted to understand how AI can extract the depths of interaction and the position of scintillation. And we also compare the performance of this AI-based method with conventional positioning method like Anger. Here is the schematic of our AI-based positioning method. So we basically simulated a preclinical PET scanner equipped with the monolithic crystal and SIPMs, 144 SIPM, and then we extracted the heat map from this SIPM, and we fed it to a multi-layer perceptron model, and it predicted for us X, Y, and Z. So in the case of a spatial resolution, you can see the scanner which used the MLP as a positioning method perform much more better than the scanner without MLP and using the Anger method. And we also simulated image quality phantom, and you can see when we are using the Anger logic, it cannot resolve some very small lesion, while the MLP algorithm can do that. So based on this study, we noticed the MLP model outperformed Anger logic-based model for extracting the 3D position of annihilation photon in scintillation photon in monolithic crystals, and the low spatial resolution of monolithic crystal can be improved with AI-based 3D positioning method. And MLP enhanced the spatial resolution by providing the depth of interaction information and avoiding image blurring compared to Anger logic-based. In the last chapter, we've talked about the software improvement. So in this chapter, we introduced the concept of deep TOF PET, which is a deep learning based model for generating the TOF beam sinograms and TOF images from non-TOF sinogram and non-TOF images. We basically wanted to understand if AI can generate the TOF information from the non-TOF information, and we also compare the projection space and image space. So here is the diagram of our model. You can see we use a non-TOF sinogram, which we gather from 140 FDG brain PET images. And we trained 7 different models, the cycle GAN model, to go directly from the non-TOF sinogram to different TOF beams. And here we also use the same model for going from the non-TOF image to TOF image. Here is the performance of our model. You can see the first row shows the reference TOF, the second one is the non-TOF, and the third and fourth row shows the output of our model in image space and sinogram space. They perform very well, both of them, but when you look at the bias map, we can see the image space perform better than the sinogram space. Here is also another example, which you can see some information in the gray matter can be missed in the non-TOF images, while when we are using our deep learning based model, they was able to resolve this information. We also calculated the average of photomen to background ratio. And you can see when we are using the non-TOF images, the ratio is around 4.5. And when we are using our deep learning model, it can improve to around 6. So based on this study, we understand AI cannot provide tough information, of course, but AI can make the non-tough images very similar to tough images. And of course, generating different tough beams from a single non-tough beam is possible, and training the model in image space outperform the implementation in the sinogram space. And we also know there are the GE healthcare, General Electric company, provided a similar strategy only on image space, and it's now commercially available. So in the next chapter, we discussed about a deep learning model for reducing the injected dose during the PET brain imaging. So we wanted to see how AI can to reduce the injected activity up to 95%. So, and we also compared training the model in image space and sinogram space. So here is the schematic of our 3D unit, which in the first scenario, we fed it with low-dose images, and it generates for us the full-dose images. And in the second scenario, we use the low-dose non-TOF sinogram, and it generates for us the full-dose non-TOF sinogram. And we also train our model on 140 FDG brain PET dataset. You can see the first row shows the full-dose images. The second one shows the low-dose, which is very noisy, and the quality is not good at all. And when we are using our deep learning-based model, it can improve it to significantly. But when we are looking at the bias map, we can see the training on sinogram space outperform the image space. We also asked 2 nuclear medicine specialists in the field to give a rank to our images from 1 to 5, which 1 represent the uninterpretable and 5 represent the excellent quality. And here we also reported the average of this quality. You can see when we are using our model in sinogram space, the quality can improve from 1.4 to around 4.1. So in this study, we understand deep learning can enhance the quality and the quality of low-dose PET images with only 5% of injected dose. And training the deep learning model in projection space give us this flexibility to apply any type of image reconstruction method or even different type of pre-processing or post-processing. And although deep learning enhances overall image quality, but it doesn't mean this image can lead to the similar diagnosis. So it's a very important field of study, which we try to address it in somehow in our next study. Which in this study, we train a deep learning model for improving the quality of whole body PET images from very fast and low dose images. So basically, we use a data set with a scanning time of to 1/8 of the conventional scan, so it's a very fast one. And we try to understand between cycle GAN and resonant which one perform better in the task of noise reduction. And of course, we wanted to understand how AI can generate the images which are trustable in the case of lesion detectability. So we train our model on a data set including 85 FDG whole body PET images. And you can see we use a cycle GAN model for going from the low quality image to high quality image. And here is the performance of our models. The second image shows the reference full dose image. The third one is the low dose and fast scan image. And the last 2 images are the output of the ResNet and cycle GAN. And again, we asked 2 nuclear medicine specialists to give a rank to our images for 2 different zones. The zone number 1 only include of the brain, and then zone number 2 include of neck and trunk. And you can see when we using the low-dose images, the quality is 2.6, and our cycle GAN model can improve it to 3.8. And we also asked them to give us their last decision about the quality of the images, if they really accept it or reject it, or asking for redoing the exam. So you can here observe which the number of failed case in the low-dose images reduced to around, from 60%, reduced to around 15% when we are using the cycle. We also asked the physician to draw some ROI around of the lesion. And we also categorized them based on their SUV. We also counted them for our different group of image. And you can see the full-dose, they was able to find around 115 lesions in the full-dose images, which it reduced to around 82 when they are using the low-dose images. And when we are using our deep learning model, it can increase the number of lesions to around 111. And of course, this graph shows us for the lesion with the smaller SUV, there is more chance to miss, and even in the low dose and even by cycling. And sorry, the deep learning model. Here is also another interesting example. You can see there are some lesions in this full dose image, and they're observable. And it's a bit difficult to find them in the low dose image, but still there are some signal. And when we are using the ResNet, of course, it's improved the image quality, but we can miss them. So the ResNet in this case can lead to false negative and false positive. And here also is the result of our cycle again, which you can see that it was able to resolve the lesion. So we understand the quality of fast scan images with only 1/8 of the standard scanning time can be significantly enhanced by CycleGAN models. And CycleGAN outperformed ResNet in lesion detection and overall image quality. And of course, relying only on image quality and quantitative metrics is not sufficient for assessing the performance of the model. And we need some more advanced methods like task-based performance. So in chapter 10, we discuss about the concept of deep TOF sign, which is a deep learning model for synthesizing the full dose TOF beams from their corresponding low dose TOF beams and also the images. So basically, we train different models to generate the full dose TOF beams from the low dose TOF beams. And we also use the similar model to go directly from the image, the low dose TOF images to full dose TOF images. And here is the performance of our model. You can see the low dose TOF images are very noisy. And when we are using our model, the quality enhanced significantly. While again, in sinogram space, they perform better than the image space. We also did a voxel-wise analysis, and you can see there was 240,000 voxel with a statistically significant difference between full dose and low dose. And when we are using our method in sinogram space, this number of voxel can reduce to only 17,000. So in this study, we understand training in sinogram space outperform training in image space for noise reduction. And having different models optimized for various TOF beams enable more flexibility for removing the problematic beam and reducing the reconstruction time. And of course, one of the advantages of the TOF capability is reducing the artifacts, which I expect our model works well for removing the artifacts. And again, sinogram denoising gives us this flexibility to apply different type of reconstruction. So in chapter 11, we went a bit further and we tried to reduce the scanning time in dynamic images. So basically, we tried to reduce this brain PET image, dynamic PET images up to 70%. We wanted to understand if AI can predict the future of the cells or voxel from their initial state. So here is a snapshot from the paper for autonomous car. You can see for the autonomous car, it's very important for us to know the behavior of the people or the other cars around of the car. So here, if you can see this person behind of this white car, we have some information from this person. And we expect to predict his behavior in the next frame, how it responds in the future. So I use the same strategy for dynamic images. So basically, we want to use a portion of the data and then predict the future of them from their initial frames. So we use a conditional variation autoencoder GAN model, and we train it on 46 subjects with canonical disuse and internet gaming disorder, and we did a 10-fold cross-validation. So here is the performance of our model. We fed the model with 25 minutes of slides, and the model predicted late 65 minutes. And the first row shows the reference images, the second row shows the predicted images. And you can see the bias increase in the late frames. We also did, we calculated the time activity curve for different region like Kodate, Kotamen, and Sergrom. And you can see our model was able to generate the images which really follow the ground truth. So the solid line shows the predicted image, and the dashed line shows the reference image. We also did a path-like graphical model analysis, and we calculated the Ki, influx rate constant. And you can see there is a good agreement between reference and predicted for different regions. So based on this study, we noticed the AI may predict the uptake distribution changes in the future from the initial uptake pattern. Of course, in this specific radio tracer we use and in this group of patients. And the VAE GAN model can reduce the scanning time by up to 70%. And our model can be less sensitive to motion artifacts, which happen at the end, at the late frame, which the patient gets tired. So in chapter 12, we introduced a new concept called robust deep, which is a model for increasing the number of data sets. And we basically wanted to see if we merge the images of two patients and we generate a new image and we fed it to our model for increasing the number of data sets. Does it improve the deep learning model performance or not? So here is the schematic of our work. Imagine we have two images from two patients. It could be CT, MR, or PET. We register them to a template, and then we multiply these two images to a mask and its inverse. So, and then we can sum these two images together, and of course the image is not very realistic, but after applying the Laplacian blending technique, we can generate a more realistic image, which is completely different from these two. And of course, we can select different masks based on our desire. So we use a data set, include the low-dose PET images, full-dose PET images, non-attenuated corrected images, and CT and MR. We also assessed our model for 4 different tasks: low-dose to full-dose, low-dose plus MR to full-dose, and non-attenuation correction to attenuation correction, and MR to CT. So here is the result, our result for attenuation correction. We imagine 2 different data sets, the small data set and large data set. So the small data set is only include 35 real case, and the large data set is include 35 real case plus 350 fake cases. And you can observe when we are using the large data set, the performance of our model improved significantly with both SSIM and PSNR. And we also did for the MR to CT task, and again, the same result happened here, and the generated image is more realistic and in the large data set when compared to small data set. We also calculated the robustness of our deep learning model by calculating the SSIM and PSNR for different epochs. And you can see when we are using the large data set, the model have less fluctuation and it's more robust than the model which we are training in the small data set. So in this study, we also understand that the Laplacian blending technique can be used to synthesize realistic 3D brain images from 2 different object images. And using Laplacian blending technique, improve the performance of deep learning models. And our model may improve the robustness and generalizability of deep learning-based models. In chapter 13, we train a cycle GAN-based model for doing partial volume correction. So basically, we train a cycle GAN model to go directly from the non-partial volume corrected images to a partial volume corrected images. So we train our model on a multi-tracer data set, include FDG, dopamine, tau, and amyloid. And we also applied our Laplacian blending method to increase the number of data sets. And here is one example of amyloid, which you can see. The first column shows the T1 images. The second one is the PET with our partial volume correction. The third one is the partial volume corrected image using the conventional method, which we use iterative Young here, which of course use the MR images as input. And the fourth column shows the AI-based partial volume correction, which doesn't use MR information. And here is also some interesting example. You can see for some of these subjects, we have some artifact in the MR images. And when we are using the conventional methods, of course, this error and this artifact can propagate to our images, our partial volume corrected images, and lead to some error. While when we are using the AI-based partial volume correction, they are immune from any artifact because we don't basically use the MR. So we also did a voxel-wise statistical analysis, and this red voxel shows the voxel with significantly higher overestimation, and the green one shows the underestimation. And you can see for most of the traces, all the regions are white. So we understand the AI-based partial volume correction can be used with or using anatomical information, and AI-based PVC is immune from any artifact, MR artifact, and this model can significantly enhance the PET image quality. And in chapter 17, we went a bit further and we tried to understand if deep learning model can do this both partial volume correction and denoising. So we use the same multi-tracer dataset. We generated the low-dose images with our partial volume correction. And we also use our augmentation model for increasing the number of datasets. And we also did a conventional partial volume correction for generating the pseudo partial volume corrected images, because of course they are not the real partial volume corrected. And then we train a cycle GAN model to go from the low dose non-partial volume corrected image to full dose partial volume corrected image. And here is also the performance of our model. You can see that our model was able to improve the quality significantly when we are using our model without using the MR images. So the take-home message of this study was the deep learning-based partial volume correction is capable of reducing the injected dose and also correcting the partial volume effect. And DPVC also doesn't require any anatomical information like CT and MR. So as a conclusion and future perspective, we developed different type of methods which can make the PET scanner more accurate, feasible, and safe. And future perspective is about working on novel PET scanner design, enhancing the patient experience during the PET scanning, exploring alternative strategy to PET imaging like MR to PET, and characterizing AI pitfall in medical imaging, which is a very interesting area of research these days, and the standardization and validation of AI-based methods. And of course, working on task-based evaluation of AI techniques is a very important thing which we plan to do, and simultaneous dual receptor imaging using deep learning is another area of research. At the end, I would like to thank all of my colleagues in PinLab you guys are not really the colleague, you are my best friends, and every day I am so happy to come and see you and have a lot of chatting during the coffee time. So thank you, all of you. And of course, I would like to thank my professor, my supervisor, Professor Zaidi, who accepted me, who trust on me, and of course, give me this opportunity to work with him and give me always this flexibility and freedom to research about the things I'm interested in. So thank you so much, Habib, for all of this time. There is also the list of the people who involved in my publication, and I would like to thank all of them. Yeah, thank you so much for your attention and comment. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So I think we can now move to questions. And just to clarify, the idea is that each jury member asks all of his questions, and then we move to the next jury member, at least that will be by default. And we will start with Professor Simon Cherry.
Okay. First of all, that was an amazing amount of work. So well done. Actually, I don't know where to start. So I'm actually going to start by asking you a general question, which is, all the work you've done, which is the piece you're most proud of? Why?
Yeah, first of all, maybe I'm more proud of the project, which I can see there are some impact in the clinic. And of course, those low-dose imaging and also reducing the scanning time, for me seems more interesting, because I see even some company right now working on developing some software to making commercialize it. So yeah, this project about reducing the dose, because I really think it makes sense, and there is a physics behind of that. And yeah, I believe even some university like Stanford University, I know they are doing the low dose imaging right now. And yeah, I guess those projects are very interesting for me.
So in that case, I'll follow up on a line of questioning related to low dose imaging then. So why do you think it's so important? So, you've got some choices here, right? One is to reduce dose, one is to reduce scan time, or another choice is to improve image quality. And it seems like you're saying you think reducing dose is the most important of those three. And I'm not sure I fully agree. So can you tell me, why you think reducing dose is so important compared to your other opportunities, which would be to scan more quickly or to improve image quality?
So first of all, I believe, of course, sometimes we are using these terms interchangeably. For example, we are using the low dose scan and fast scan, and there is some difference here. But I believe when we are working on the low dose imaging, maybe it's also the model can be used for fast imaging. So they are very close to each other. And of course, for the patient who really need to monitor several times, or even the pediatric patient, so the scan dose, because during the scan, the patient received around 5 to 8 millisievert dose, and I believe it's not less if it wanted to go through several scans, and especially for the pediatric patients. So, but I totally agree with working on our current PET scanners and improving their image quality also is very important, of course. But here we are trying to push the limit to see, okay, if you have a very noisy image, how we can improve the quality.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned the a particular use case where it would be important to reduce dose. In pediatric patients who are getting sequential scanning, I completely agree. But I think for the general patient population, I think the fast scanning is of interest, and I agree it's the same methods. It's it's basically low count data, right? Either way, and so to me, the advantage of fast scanning is that from the patient experience point of view, it's better because some patients are in pain and long scan times are hard for them. And secondly, you reduce the impact of patient motion as well if you can scan much more quickly. So that would improve image quality indirectly, right? So I think there's huge advantages if we can capture the PET scans much more quickly that I think outweigh, in most cases, the benefits of injecting less activity. So that's just my opinion, but just something to think about, that you might want to reframe some of your work, at least to equally weight fast scanning as low dose, because I think actually the fast scanning might be the more important of the two. So I missed the instructions for how we're going to do the questioning. Am I supposed to just keep going till I'm done with my questions, or are we just taking it in turns?
That's okay. Can you keep going with your questions?
Because the problem, since you let me go first, is that if I could keep going for hours, this is so exciting. The work, there's so much great work here, and I have a list of like 50 questions here. I'm not going to ask them all. Let me go to your slide 89, because I think which was sort of your summary slide about future work, which I think really mentions some of the key sort of future steps. Okay. So things that caught my eye on that slide were characterizing AI pitfalls in medical imaging, standardization and validation, and then task-based evaluation of AI techniques. And I think many of your papers show very promising preliminary results, but it's a long way to go from those promising results, right, to a commercially implementable, robust, reliable, reproducible method.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's take characterizing AI pitfalls. So can you just tell us, since you are so experienced with these methods, what are the major pitfalls that you have encountered, and how have you handled those? Let's just start with that question.
Actually, based on the study I had, I'm talking specifically for example, the low-dose imaging or fast scan imaging, we noticed, for example, when we change the count level, it can really lead to AI completely not robust results. So it means that just by changing the activity a bit in the low-dose images, the model can mess up. Or, for example, it can happen also for the timing. So it's very sensitive to the initial condition. And of course, we can improve the generalizability by increasing our data set. But of course, it's one of the pitfalls. And the second one is sometimes we really observe some completely not understandable artifact in our images, which we cannot also follow up to understand where does it come from. And it's the black box nature of the AI. And of course, there are some methods to address this issue, like for explainable AI. But it's need plenty of work to understand. So my mean here by AI pitfalls in medical imaging, so it's return to this observation which we had based on the different studies.
Okay, and then you mentioned the need for task-based evaluation of AI techniques, which I completely agree with. So if you were to do a project along those lines, what would it be? I mean, what would you pick and why? And so take us through, if you were to start a project based on task-based evaluation, what it would be.
I believe one of the interesting projects I have in my mind is to do the same. For example, in one of our studies, we tried to reduce the injected dose step by step and find in which level of the dose reduction, the images still can lead to the same diagnosis. And we understand, okay, 20% is the safe option. But still it's not completely clear if we ask the physician to give a rank, not only about the quality, about the diagnosis. For example, if they lead to the same pattern in amyloid images and tau images or not. So maybe we can ask the physician to give a positive or negative amyloid status, and then based on that we can calculate a ROC curve and see, okay, if the improved images by AI can compete with the full dose. I can imagine several scenarios which we can use this task-based evaluation.
I want to turn now to a question about sort of more on the scanner design side. So your early chapters, you had some interesting designs, and you talked about how some of these designs, I think at one point you said something like, it was a better trade-off between resolution and sensitivity. How do you define that the trade-off is better? Because the trade-off is still there. I'm thinking about, for example, your preclinical system, where you had the thin and the thick detectors, and you said it was a better trade-off. How did you come to that conclusion?
I don't remember I said the trade-off was better, but we didn't investigate the level of trade-off. For example, I don't know, by changing the crystal thickness and calculating the resolution and sensitivity, and then applying another configuration and calculate again the trade-off. No, we never did that. But I'm just saying, for example, when we are using these configurations, which let the detector get closer, and so we can maybe improve the spatial resolution and also sensitivity just by mechanical aspects. So we don't really answer to this trade-off. I cannot say we solve the trade-off. No, of course there is a trade-off still there, but it led us to, for example, in this scanner, okay, you can see when we are using the thin crystals, so it's bring for us the high resolution, and when we put the thicker one, it's bring the high sensitivity. So in this case, we actually address this trade-off. I cannot say we completely remove it, but just by changing the configuration, I guess we.
Well, I think it comes back to that same point with the AI algorithms, which is that it's task dependent, right? And so it's task based. So the nice thing about this flexible design is that I think you can optimize the sensitivity resolution trade-off for a given task, and it's going to be different for different tasks.
Exactly.
So it's not that this is a better trade-off, it's just that you have an opportunity to play with that trade-off through the system design or system configuration. So okay. All right, I think that's good. I want to make sure I give plenty of time for everybody else to ask questions, so I'll stop at that point. And congratulations on a great body of work.
Thank you for the share.
Okay, thank you. And I think now we can turn to Professor Abbas Alavi.
I think it was very appropriate that Simon took the lead, since he's the world leader in instrumentation of PET. I really admire what Simon has done, and I think it was just great to hear Simon's views of what you have done, which is really outstanding. And I'm very, very, very pleased to see someone with your background come to a very, very complicated domain of research and do such an incredible job in really trying to clarify some of the issues that we deal with. Having been involved with PET for almost 5 decades, I have realized the difficulties that we face, definitely for just performance, but above all, quantification, which is really going to make PET very unique as you have indicated in your thesis as well. So these issues that you have addressed are going to be of great interest and importance for future developments in our field. I have a correction. I have some questions about motion artifacts. Of course, brain, even though brain we think that doesn't move, it does. If you go to the operating room and look at the brain, it pulsates. So even though it's a confined area and it definitely doesn't move as much as in other parts of the body, that is, even in the brain, is a problem. But definitely when it comes to chest and abdomen, motion artifacts are extremely serious. Lung diaphragm moves up and down like 4 or 5 centimeters each time you take a deep breath and then expire the air. And of course, it becomes even more important when you're dealing with cardiac diseases. Cardiac muscle contract 70 times a minute. Along with that, heart goes up and down, again with respiration. So they have not addressed the serious issues of motion correction. Unfortunately, gated studies are being questioned. Definitely, it's very difficult for the lung employed because of the regular aspect of the organ. But when you are trying to look at like coronary arteries, that contraction of the cardiac muscle along with movement of the heart up and down becomes very difficult. So my question is, have you given any thoughts about applications of what you have described in the rest of the body? Because I think being honest with you, brain is only 5% of what the volume is. In an active head center, we don't do probably more than 5–10% of the cases. So cancer, inflammation, atherosclerosis, these are the big things that PET will be of great importance in addressing as the most powerful modality. So give us your thoughts about motion correction.
So thank you, Professor Alavi. First of all, I never had an experience for motion correction, but I have some thought, and of course, I plan to do some research about it. One of the really useful application of AI is doing motion correction, especially for cardiac. And because we are able to reducing the number of frames, of course, we can reduce the probability of motion. And there are plenty of models which can even work in a 4 dimension. It means that they can take the EEG plus the MR images. So that can help a lot for doing a motion correction. So yeah, that's one of the idea I have, and I plan to work on it. So using the spatial domain plus the temporal, plus the time domain, and both together for doing motion correction. And it's one of the things I plan to work. And also working on denoising doing some partial volume correction for cardiac is also, I guess, make very sense. And we plan to do a partial volume correction through the deep learning for the cardiac images also.
Well, I didn't, definitely these are the areas that it can improve upon motion related, just degrading factors in PET imaging, and just imaging the people for 5 minutes versus CT scan that is done just very rapidly. It's just a long way to go. Maybe it will never be able to reach what CT does. And I think that's definitely something that you and Habib should really concentrate on. This irregularity of ventilation is a big problem. People just sitting in that machine, they worry about something, disease, they take a deep breath. When they just fall asleep, they have shallow rest. So it's a very, very complicated problem. As I said, this is a very important area of application of PET, just cancer, inflammation, atherosclerosis, these all in the chest. So, even in the abdomen, liver lesions, could be significantly affected by respiratory motion. So it's an area that I would like to see colleagues in physics, to address and try to really improve the final product as much as we can by taking this physiologic aspect of our body. I have another question, and that is the future of PET MRI. You refer to it in your thesis, but you really don't go into any great detail, although PET MRI is still a very important modality. Definitely it has been very important in the brain, but it's going to become important in other applications of MRI, namely looking at cardiovascular disease, namely looking at musculoskeletal disorders. Any place that MRI has been important, I think PET MRI is going to be as well or more important than MRI alone. So that is something that, of course, I'd like to hear your views, and maybe even Habib and Simon could really discuss this as well. The big problem, of course, with PET MRI is the just correction for attenuation correction. Yeah, before when we had CT, and as for attenuation correction, we just used the very simple ways of correction for brain. But as soon as you move down to the chest and abdomen, this becomes a very important problem. So how do we correct for attenuation in the chest and abdomen, namely trunk? Have you given any thoughts about this very important part of PET MRI? And of course, we have only smallest number of PET MRIs, but there's no question in my mind that this is going to take off sooner or later, and it's become a major modality in medicine. So we got to address physical factors that are going to make PET MRI successful. So have you given any thoughts about PET MRI?
Yeah, actually, during the time I was at Stanford, of course, their PET MRI was the main scanner for doing the research. And I know they are using some very fancy studies like, predicting for example, cerebral blood flow from the MR images instead of O15 images. So I found those strategies are very interesting for, using MR information, for example, the ASL sequence for predicting the cerebral blood flow and completely removing the O15 image. And they did some very nice job there with this instrumentation. And of course, doing the attenuation correction, there is plenty of space for doing attenuation correction with PET MRs. And the MR-based reconstruction. So if I wanted to tell you what I'm thinking about the future of the PET MR, I would say this type of project would be very demanding in the future. Maybe.
I think definitely, you have got a very strong group at Geneva. I would like to really, contribute to really just bring PET MRI more effectively to day-to-day practice of medicine as PET CT has done. I mean, and in my view, of course, the future is going to be PET along with CT, not CT alone. PET with MRI, not MRI alone. So in order to really make PET MRI a reality, we have to just, do what we can based on the capabilities that both physiological as well as instrumentation-wise and software-wise that can make PET MRI a reality in day-to-day practice of medicine. So that's.
Maybe I can also add something, Professor Aladi. Sorry if I interrupt you. I know even some companies really commercialize it, some insert MR. So that's also a very interesting area of research and work because we already have several different PET CT, and maybe the hospital, especially in developing countries, prefer to buy the PET MR insert and only use it inside of their own PET CT, and of course they also gather the MR. So I agree with you. There is plenty of studies and work on it.
One more question, I think my last question, although if there's time we can ask more questions, is organ-specific instruments.
Yes.
brain scanners have been around for a long time, but there are very, very few places that have pure brain scanners, primarily because of the cost of having a machine that really, is very expensive, but unfortunately, we do very few brains. Just the possibility exists that amyloid imaging may change that, and people can justify buying specialized brain scanner. So there are very few of them just around in the world. And of course, it becomes even more complicated when we go to other organ disease. For example, we at Penn developed a dedicated breast imaging. Unfortunately, its performance was not great. We couldn't see lesions that were very close to the chest wall. So even though definitely you can get around attenuation better, you're going to be able to give a smaller dose. But really, my enthusiasm for dedicated PET imaging instruments is not very high because of low volume as well as difficulties that we face. I think that's something that I'd like to hear your comments. Why you think that dedicated PET instruments will play a role in the future practice of PET imaging?
Yeah, even in this survey, we asked the expert about the future of this dedicated PET scanner, and mostly believe that, of course, first the brain PET dedicated PET scanner is more demanding, then the prostate PET scan, and then breast is very demanding. And I agree with the current dedicated breast PET scanner are suffer from the geometrical coverage. And maybe this type of partial PET scanners, like the one, I don't know how to show it. For example, this the one with like a rotational detectors or gantries, or the one with movable gantries can improve the quality for them to cover all the region, even under the shoulder, which can have some lesion also. So, but yeah, I mean, this type of MI or this type of dedicated breast scanner have some real issue and problem, which they cannot cover all the body.
All right, thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Now we move to Professor Ko Yoshi, please.
So yeah, that's really great work. So it's unbelievable that almost more than 3 PhD work, so within 1 PhD. So it's almost equivalent in German area habilitation thesis, not really the PhD. Yeah. So like lots of interesting work, and so like for the top generation. So you also mentioned the Omni technology. So I don't know, because I haven't really looked deep into this Omni technology. What's the differences of your method compared with the Omni method? So,
sorry, which method? The one we developed by GU? Yeah. So first of all, they did on image space. So, but we also did on image space plus the projection space. So we went from the non-TOF sinogram to different TOF, while they only used the non-TOF images and generated the TOF images. So our work can have some added value because at least we have the sinogram, we can apply different reconstruction method, we can apply different iteration and subsets. So yeah, that is the difference between our work and their methods.
So you mentioned that you add so also this implementation of sinogram space, and then your results shows that the sinogram space performs better than the image space. Are there some like the intuitive explanation why this?
Yeah, actually, here I can show. So of course, for deep learning model, it's so difficult to go from a non-TOF sinogram to different TOF. So because imagine we have the summation of several factors, and then we want to separate the signals. So here we are doing signal separation, right? because all that we have the summation of all of those tough things, and we want to reach to every of them. So it's a very difficult task for AI in compared to going directly from the non-tough image to the tough images. And because of that, it didn't perform better than the image space.
And then so like for the Polaroid PET cell, so that's really amazing that for to introduce the polarized signal. So and so I don't know if like the crystal size so could it influence your performance. Did you also investigate
The thickness, you mean?
yeah thickness and also like the like
So yeah, actually there are several studies, and I also used one of my previous studies, which I did when I was in master, and they really find actually simulate different crystal thickness, and we found the optimal one. But here it's completely makes sense. By increasing the thickness of crystal, you probably lose your resolution and increase your sensitivity. So I believe there is always this relation. So we just, and it doesn't matter in this study because we just wanted to talk about the concept of the polarized. So it doesn't matter to have a large thickness crystal or thin one. So yeah.
So, and so you also mentioned to investigate the AI more like, so because I like your like merge the data set. So this concept is really nice. I don't know if there's any like the quality control. You can check if this like the merged data set, is it realistic or not realistic?
The only method we just went through the images, and visually we check that to doesn't see very messed up in the generated image. But again, it's not really make a huge difference because we only use them to train our model on a fake data set, and then we're using transfer learning, for example, and train our model on the real data set. So because of that transfer learning, our model improved better. So, and it really doesn't matter. Of course, sometimes it's put a lesion in a completely wrong way, in a wrong place. But there are some other regions which the model can learn based on. So yeah, at the end, it's improved the quality, the performance of the deep learning.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now, please, Professor Valentina Guerripoto.
Thank you very much. So, I mean, I joined my colleagues previously in congratulating you for the fantastic work you've done. It's really nice to see all this work spanning and the whole, let's say, spectrum of work instrumentation, tech instrumentation work, from the hardware to how the hardware can be augmented by software solutions to what we can do on the images that we've derived. So fantastic. I'm clearly a user, so I cannot have, appropriate or competent questions on section 1. So I'll go more for sections 2 and 3. And what I really liked in the way you presented it is also highlighting so many times how caution is needed with these results. So promising, satisfactory, performing well, but in understanding its pitfalls or having, let's say, specific ways to measure the impact on task specifics is also important. So I fully agree with that. I was wondering, I was asking you your views on when we will have a good solution for that. So, for example, if you think that having large databases is needed, and then how large? If you think that including multiple sites or multiple conditions is needed, multiple ethnicities, genders, type of patients is also needed. So I wanted you to develop on this aspect, which data are needed and how can we get there in order to have solutions that are, let's say, bulletproof and we can rely on.
Yeah, I believe the most important part about the data set is their variability. So I believe if we have, 1,000 images very similar together, it doesn't add a lot of value to the model. So the variability is very important. And of course, the variability shouldn't be a lot because it's also bringing some bias to the model. So, for example, I had the experience to train the model, for example, for amyloid data set, and then we traced it on the, for example, the top for low dose to full dose test. And the model didn't perform well when we really trained the model for different tracers separately. So their data should have some correlation. Of course, they have some variability, but they also have some correlation. And regarding the number, as much as you can add more correlated and diverse data set, so I guess it's desirable, and there is no limit for that.
Are there any efforts in your community you're aware of in combining data sets or finding, let's say, a reference data set on which you can compare different solutions? So to go back to the question of telling you if it would be possible to test your from non-TOF to TOF solution and the GE from non-TOF to TOF solution and see which one works better.
So basically, there is not any platform to do that, but there are some challenges which I know even from the University of Bern, they are doing some low dose challenge, and they provide some online data set, and you can test your model based on their data, and you can also see the scores. So yeah, there are several type of challenge for different tasks. But regarding the performance, yeah, it's very difficult to even compare the performance I presented here in my paper and the same person in another countries, or even the way we are doing evaluation can be very tricky. I mean, the people can report the SSIN or PSNR completely differently because they have an image with higher, I don't know, zero padding. So yeah, the result completely can change. So it's the reason which I'm saying that task-based evaluation is very important.
And probably also harmonization of these measurements.
Exactly. One of the problems with this multi-centering is the harmonization of the data. So that's also another problem. But there is also another type of method like the federated learning, which some of our colleagues work on it. Isaac has several papers on the federated learning, which we basically have the data from the different institutes, and we use all of their data without taking them. We just send our model there, we train on their data set, again they send us the weighted, and we concatenate those information and make an overall data set. So yeah.
Thank you. Great. So when you were talking about the data and the need of variability in order to learn, I imagine that what a deep learning solution will produce will be, let's say, representing the majority or the most common or the common feature in a way across all the data. Do you think there are ways for the model to, let's say, point out to cases that behave differently from what expected? And let's say signal that in those cases, the result of the model is to be considered less reliable?
I'm not sure I get your question.
I'm not sure I'm phrasing it correctly. I'm trying to, one of the aspects, again, you pointed to more and more is how we can rely on the results. So you've also pointed out to the fact that there are outliers. Are there can we expect in near future of implementations any ways to, let's say, appreciate either a priori or with the data that have been collected that the individual case has high risk of being an outlier?
You mean we do some pre-checking the data and we give them a score of how much is probably this data input and enter to my model and it's messed up, and yeah. So yeah, I believe first we need to train our model and then we test it. For example, as I mentioned, for the low dose imaging, we really understand that we change the injected dose. For example, I made the image with 5% of the dose and I change it to 10%, the model can mess up in some cases. So yeah, I can say, please keep your injected dose in this range. Or even the age, when we train our model on only adults, so we cannot probably apply it on the children. So yeah, after training the model, we should consider this type.
Okay, well, thank you very much then.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. So the two of us, should I give you the final one?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, please go ahead. Right.
So yes, thank you for the presentation and the thesis. So I learned many things in this field, which is different from mine. Can I just ask you a general question? So when you have this AI-based method, they don't create information, of course. They take all the information that you have from the data,
Yes.
and then you ask it to look like something else. And then how do you know if it's taking the data that is really there and showing it in a different way, as opposed to creating something that looks like something else, but making it out of nothing?
Yeah, we can actually, by doing some assessment, you can understand it. For example, in our this low-dose project, sometimes we can see there is some lesion, but because of the high level of the noise, the physician cannot see it, or it's really it's lost between the noise. But the lesion is really there. And when we are doing the deep learning, applying our deep learning method, of course, it's reduce, make this image more smoother and increase the contrast, and the lesion are more visible. So, or for example, for this non-TOF to TOF, the information is not there. So we cannot expect it's really generate the TOF information. But of course, it makes the images more look like the TOF images. So basically, you can design some images or some strategy which are model messed up. It's completely possible. So yes.
So in the first case, okay, I understand you see something in the improved image, you can go back to the original image and check. For instance, that there was a lesion. For instance, you can actually see it in the first image where it was difficult to see, and then you're guided by your improved image.
Yeah.
But in the case of the tough situation, so when you're creating something where you don't really have the data, what do you gain from generating this?
No, when I'm talking about the tough information, because we completely know the physics behind of that. And when even our model perform well, we should aware which, okay, our model maybe generate very fancy images, but it's not trusted. But for the low-dose imaging, the information is there, so you can trust it. Especially, for example, I mentioned when we are using 20% of the injected dose, even the low-dose images without applying the AI perform well. The physician can reach to the same diagnosis. So, and of course, if you apply the AI, it can make them improve. So, yeah, we should understand for which task we really use our methods.
Okay, so you're saying most cases the information is there and you show it.
Yeah, we should first make sure our model, our task makes sense. There is a physics behind that.
And maybe just also related to this. So let's say you want to know whether there's a lesion or not. Okay, this is what you mentioned. Why would you make the AI answer this question and make a classifier which tells you lesion or no lesion as opposed to improving the image?
Yeah, but actually that's another type of study which even some of our colleagues do, doing the segmentation and doing also classification of the lesions. Even we have some type of region-based denoising, so we can make sure, okay, for this region our model performed better, for this region didn't perform well. So yeah, this type of strategy is also very common in our field we are doing.
And what would you say is the advantage of using your strategy, which is to generate an image which looks better?
I'm not sure I get your question exactly.
So you could take the original data, you could ask in the original data, is there a lesion or not? So you're saying that's what some people do. And you take the original data and you, if I understand well, you improve it with the AI to make it look like something better, where you can recognize things more easily. So what do you gain by doing this as opposed to directly training a network that tells you there's a lesion, there's not a lesion?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you are saying why we don't do exactly diagnosis from our low-dose images instead of to make it? The problem is, first of all, for many of the cases, we don't looking for the lesion. Sometimes we are looking for the patterns. For example, for the amyloid or tau imaging, we really want to see how's the pattern of the radioactive distribution. So we are not looking for the lesion in this type of case. But you can also ask the same question. So we can make a classifier to classify the low-dose images. But again, you can see even in many of the studies there is which shows the physician can perform less accurate when they are assessing the low-dose images in compared to full-dose images. Even you see in one of my slides, I show the number of lesion detected in the low-dose images. You can see here is 82, while in the reference images is 150. So it means, yeah, the low-dose images can also lead to some wrong decision, and maybe even the classifier which train on low-dose data set cannot perform better than the classifier which train on the reference data set.
There's not really a fundamental reason that the classifier on the low dose will perform better than the classifier on the artificially generated high dose image.
I would say
the same information is present in any case in the original data.
Yeah, we can, of course, I'm saying there is the information there, but even for the AI, it could be different to do a classification based on a low quality image and high quality image. We cannot expect a same model trained on the low quality image and high quality image perform similarly.
But if the high quality image comes from the low quality image, I don't see why.
Yeah, and if we have a scenario which we improve the quality of the low-dose images and we generate really an enhanced version of the low-dose, and again we train a model to do a classification, I believe this model performs better than the model trained on the low-dose, because the low-dose is full of the noise. And for example, one of the things we are looking as a lesion is the amount of SUV, the amount of the activity. And in the low-dose images, you can see plenty of voxel with high level of the SUV, which they are not really the tumors or the lesion. So in this case, the model which trained on the low-dose images can perform worse than the model trained on the quality enhanced images.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not supposed to ask questions here because I'm advised in this case if I do. So what I can do is, maybe for your colleagues, is just to say a few words about you, Amirhossein. We all call him Amir in the labs, and congratulations. I think you did very well. So I'd like to say a few words about you, not only as a scientist, but also as a human being, because I think this very important in having a good atmosphere within a research lab. So I mentioned this for your colleagues as well. So we don't have this tradition in Switzerland as they have in the Netherlands and Scandinavian countries to have a very long roadshow after the thesis presentation. But I took few notes just not to miss the important things I'm about to say today. So I'll start from the beginning anyway. So recall that when we met, I guess 4 years ago in Tehran, where you were actually not a scientist per se, but you're our tourist guy, right? So we were taking us to the mountains, and I still recall the shops in the mountains and the place that you mentioned to me. You said, this is the place where I felt in love for the first time. Apologies for your girlfriend. It was Tunisia at that time anyway, so don't count this. So I realized that you're a very sensitive person, but I also saw the passion in your eyes, and immediately realized that the potential and that you'll be successful as a scientist and decide to hire you as PhD student, and obviously you did very well. And my intuition, I think, paid off. And we're very proud of you today. And I think without any hesitation, I can say that you, Amir, along with Isaac, you're sitting right there, And Azada, she's online as well. The three of you defended this year, and you think you did fantastic work. I'm very proud of all of you, and I think you very good example for your colleagues sitting in there, so the new PhD students probably going to defend next year or the following year. But anyways, I think you're a very good example for those young PhD students. So you did very good work, and you brought some new blood in the lab. I think you joined it before Isaac came. And you faced many challenges, but you developed a pretty large number of techniques, algorithms that you presented today. And very much admire your attitude and very strong character, which is, aligned with your very high sensitivity, something that we can feel. So clearly, without being motivated, hardworking person, I think you not have reached it the level that you have today. And even if I recall that you didn't have only joy, and you went through some painful periods. I recall that you lost a member of your family during the pandemic, and that was very painful. So sorry for this. But again, over the years, I think it was really a pleasure to have to be your supervisor over the years, and like to emphasize over the role played by your colleagues here. I would like to thank all the members of the jury for their work and for providing important feedback and asking interesting questions. Thank you, Amir, just for the way you are, and then congratulations in advance, and then happy to see you as one of the leaders in the field in the near future.
Thank you so much, Amir. Thank you. Shall we go for the confidential discussions? So just for the external members, Simon and Abbas, can you please mute yourself on Zoom and join us on the Teams link that I provided for the confidential discussions? I'm just going to launch it right now. And we're going to move to another place because this is supposed to be confidential, right? So see you in, I don't know, 5-10 minutes. Thank you so much.
So, Sanaat Amirhossein, I'm happy to say the jury has met and you have passed, so congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
We'll take plenty of them later on.
Okay. If you want, you can have it.
Yeah, later. No, give it to me. To show you. It should be on the front. Like this. All right.
Yeah, that's a bit complicated.
Like this?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess it's complicated.